Honestly, there is no better genre to play cooperatively than a good RPG. However, I have to tell you that on Android it's really hard to find an RPG that lets you play with other people. But of course, I did this work for you, so get your phone ready because this list will only have the best ones. You already know. Leave a like and let's get into it. I barely hear anyone talking about this game anymore. I remember that when it was released, it was an absolutely huge success. Let's talk now about Tower of Fantasy. So what? I know the game ended up disappointing a lot of people, especially at the beginning. People were really expecting something much bigger and received something pretty average. But the truth is that over time, Tower of Fantasy evolved in a very good way. It improved in almost every aspect. For example, nowadays the game no longer has gacha. There are servers that are completely free from pay to win, and it's a little easier to progress. When it was first released, it was really hard to recommend this game because of those issues. But the truth is that the game listened to its community, which is very loyal and improved a lot. So yes, I highly recommend this one. I honestly don't understand why this game isn't more famous on Android. Let's talk now about UNDECEMBER. It has many differences compared to the other games we've talked about here, and of course I'm only going to focus on those differences. One of the biggest differences in this game is that you create your own character, and it works kind of like a sandbox system. You can use whatever equipment you want and choose whatever skills you want for your character. This ends up being really good because you basically have all the classes in a single character. Another thing that makes the game stand out is its story mode, the crossplay feature, and of course the cooperative mode as well. You could say that this game is slowly growing and is very well made. It definitely deserves more recognition. A very forgotten game on the Play Store, but of course it's worth taking a good look at it. Let's talk now about Way of Retribution. This game mixes RPG elements with even some MMORPG features. You can find other players in the world doing the same things as you, but usually to cooperate with them you need to enter dungeons. The game offers several different classes for you to develop, and unlike MMORPGs or even other games on our list, it has a much more responsive combat system where you need to think carefully before attacking, defending yourself, and of course using your abilities. This is the type of game that will probably never appear for you on the Play Store, and that's exactly why maybe you should give it a chance. One of the biggest games released recently, and the hype around it is really huge. Let's talk now about Where Winds Meet. Basically breaking away from the trend of all those games trying to be similar to Genshin Impact, this one follows a completely different strategy with more human characters and a gameplay style focused on the story. The game does everything really well, from its graphics and gameplay to even its story mode, which is honestly very good. However, what many people don't know is that it does have a cooperative mode, and it's actually very interesting whether you want to defeat bosses or explore the game world. And unlike other games on our list, in this one you can basically do almost everything in cooperative mode. It's really good. This game mixes a lot of RPG elements with a battle royale style. Let's talk now about a game called World Eternal Online. The main focus of the game is to be the last survivor. So far everything sounds normal, but of course you create your character and choose a class for them, and that class will determine many things. After that, you are placed on a map full of NPCs and of course enemies that you need to defeat. So you could say that your character progression and even the way you play follow an RPG style, but you still need to be the last survivor, just like in a battle royale. And surprisingly, it works really well. You should definitely give this game a chance. If you have never seen this game before, it's basically a Pokemon style game. Let's talk now about KARDMI Mobile. The idea of the game is still very similar to Pokemon. You have your character entering a world you don't know, and of course there are the KARDMI, which are the monsters you can collect. After that, the game offers a story mode where you travel through several different cities collecting many different types of monsters. But something that nobody expected is that the game is also an MMORPG, since in the cities you can find other players, and even in the guild you can do the famous PvP with them and maybe explore the small world that the game has. However, it's worth remembering that just like Pokemon, this game was not made for PvP, so you can say that the game has very few features focused on this style. Without a doubt, one of the biggest releases from last year is this game here, and you can have a really good cooperative experience in it. Let's talk now about NTE NEVERNESS to EVERNESS. those who have never seen this game before, it was being called the GTA of anime, and I can tell you that the game really lives up to that name. It has an open world that is truly impressive, and unlike fantasy worlds, this game presents a more realistic and very beautiful environment. However, it doesn't differentiate itself that much from other games in the same style. It's basically a high-quality action RPG. And of course, like many games on our list, the game has several cooperative features for you to play with other people, but to be honest with you, this is another game that focuses heavily on single-player modes. However, it does have some really cool cooperative modes. Another game that not many people know about, actually it doesn't really go unnoticed on this channel. Let's talk now about SHADOWBORN. To be honest, I really like the classes in this game. They make the characters feel very different from each other. For example, the archer is completely different from the necromancer, and they have abilities that can be really confusing at first. At first, you will basically just defeat monsters, level up a little, and then you unlock the famous cooperative mode. Unlike other games on our list where they give you a lot more freedom, this one has a cooperative mode with a beginning, middle, and end, and it's usually pretty challenging as well. However, unlike Diablo Immortal, which we already talked about, this one has a more relaxed style. You can play it without having to worry too much. The truth is that a lot of people ended up being disappointed with this game, but the truth is also that it has a really good cooperative mode. Do you know it? Its name is the 7 Deadly Sins Origin. The game puts you in the world of an anime that was very popular some time ago, and honestly, I don't know anything about this anime. However, just like Game of Thrones, which we talked about earlier, you can play it without any problem because the game will introduce you to many things, and maybe you'll even end up watching the anime in the process. But one really cool thing that the game added is the cooperative mode. Unlike other games and its competitors, in this one you can do almost all of the game's systems in cooperative mode. Whether it's the story mode, PvP, or exploring the world, everything in this game can be done together. A while ago, this game was actually a competitor's Diablo, but nowadays it is basically forgotten. Let's talk now about Torchlight Infinity.
An ugly monster, just like your soul.
Partner, remember, the strength you lost.
Unlike the other games on our list, this one has pre-made characters that also work as the classes for your characters. There are around 6 or 7 characters for you to choose from, and all of them feel very different from each other. This is another dungeon crawler game that usually works really well in cooperative mode. I would say the game doesn't innovate that much in terms of gameplay, but I really like its graphic style. It has a very beautiful cartoon look, and of course, unlike other games where everything is more medieval, this one has a slightly more modern feeling as well. Game of Thrones KINGSROAD puts you in the role of a character who is completely lost in the Game of Thrones universe, and let's talk about it now. I think what keeps many people away from playing this game is not having watched the series, but you can play it without any problem. It's just a shared world, and there are no references to the series or things that you need to learn beforehand. Actually, in this game, you create your own character and end up helping several small houses, which are basically the poorer people in the game. You do see some important characters appearing, but they are just NPCs for you to complete quests. This is a really good game to play cooperatively. The open world is fantastic, the gameplay is really fun, and it's the type of game that feels very complete, allowing you to play for hours and hours. Another game that we couldn't leave out of this list is this one because many people end up playing it in cooperative mode. I'm talking about the famous GENSHIN Impact.
Propagate!
Well, you have probably already played it or at least got curious about how it works exactly, and if I'm not mistaken, once you reach around level 10, you unlock the cooperative mode to do missions with other people, and it's actually really fun. The truth is that I stopped playing Genshin Impact when the 3rd city was released, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know exactly how the game is nowadays, but it's probably huge and has a lot more things to do. However, even though it is a really good cooperative game, the truth is that many people ended up ignoring this mechanic because it wasn't as rewarding. This is a game that not many people know has a famous cooperative mode as well, and the co-op in this game is really good. Let's talk now about Guardian Tales. Well, a very good summary of the story is that your character is basically one of the simplest knights around who ends up saving the future princess in different kingdoms where she gets involved. The game has around 20 different worlds with around 20 stages each. Honestly, that's a lot of offline gameplay, and of course, since it's on this list, the game has cooperative modes for you to play with other people and even PvP modes if you want. The cooperative mode in this game is really good, and of course, unlike many other games we've talked about here, the co-op in this one usually has a specific objective and it's actually very challenging. Unlike many games on our list, this one was made essentially as a cooperative game for you to play with other people. Let's talk about HELLGUARD. The idea of the game is for you to enter dungeon areas and defeat several enemies. It's basically a dungeon crawler as well. However, unlike Diablo Immortal, which we talked about earlier on this list, this one comes in a 3D format with a more strategic combat system, and of course that changes everything. Inside the dungeons you can also play with up to 4 people. The game is very simple when it comes to that and works in a pretty easy way, but the gameplay itself is much more challenging. Even the classes in the game are more complicated to choose. Maybe you could see this game as a game made for girls, but in reality only the strongest players can handle it. Let's talk now about Infinity NIKKE. Now, jokes aside, this is an RPG with a more feminine style, and when I say style, I really mean that. Instead of changing your character's equipment, you change your character's outfits, making her have completely different abilities. However, it comes packed with the ideas of a huge open world RPG with a lot of things to explore, and of course that's what ended up attracting many people. Like many games on our list, it also unlocks a cooperative mode later on, allowing you to explore the world and do several different activities. However, just like another game we mentioned, it doesn't really have a big objective in the cooperative mode. Theoretically, this game might look like that other one, which is basically an MMORPG with roguelike elements, but this game has a different approach. Let's talk about Born Again Online. Unlike the other one, which is much more focused on RPG elements, this one is much more focused on the roguelike style. However, the game still features an open world for you to explore with other players or by yourself, along with several quests that you can complete together. But without a doubt, the feature that divides opinions the most in this game is the famous permadeath, which is usually found in games with a roguelike style. In this game, if your character ends up dying, you literally lose that character. You can play the game either solo or by cooperating with other players, but the ideal thing is that you don't die. This was one of the last RPG games I remember that managed to break out of the bubble and become popular on Android. Let's talk now about Crystal of Atlan. Well, maybe you could also consider it an MMORPG since it has worlds where you can find other players to complete dungeons with, but it's worth remembering that the game does have an open world, although most of the things you do in the game are basically inside the dungeons. You can play both alone and with other people depending on how you want to play, and what really stands out in this game is its gameplay. It's worth mentioning that it's almost like a dungeon crawler but with a hack and slash style combat system. It's also worth mentioning that another thing that is highly praised in the game besides its cooperative mode is its PvP mode. Of course, we couldn't leave this one out. It's probably one of the most famous cooperative RPGs of all time. Let's talk now about Diablo Immortal. Since its release, the game has been very controversial. Many people didn't want the game at first because a Diablo game for mobile felt very strange, but the truth is that the game was released and today it is one of the most profitable games on the Play Store, and the truth is that the game is actually very good. You enter dungeons alone or with other people to level up your characters and collect the rarest items possible. It's basically the game that popularized the dungeon crawler genre, and it does that very well. However, I need to warn you that the game has a terrible monetization system and it receives a lot of criticism because of that. That type of game that you can compare to a survival game, but at the same time it's also an MMORPG. Let's talk now about Dragon and Home. The game looks a lot like Minecraft, mainly because everything has that blocky style with graphics that are very similar to Minecraft, and at the beginning you really have to collect stones, gather wood and survive, but the game eventually starts becoming an RPG as well. However, something that many people don't know is that it's also an MMO. You can find other players in the world, cooperate with them or do other activities together. At the beginning it has more of that survival feeling, but after that you start entering dungeons to defeat enemies while also building your own house, for example. Now imagine an MMORPG where the way you play is basically like a roguelike. Let's talk about Dungeon Cross Relic Hunter. Just like other games on our list, the game features several characters that basically work as the game's classes. After choosing your main character, you are placed into a map full of other players. The game is basically about entering dungeons and defeating as many enemies as possible, whether you play alone or with other people, but surprisingly the gameplay feels a lot like a roguelike. Even when you die, you return to the main area of the game. There isn't much mystery about this game, and you can really play cooperatively in a very easy way. Did you know that this is one of the first online RPG games available on the Play Store? Let's talk now about ARCANE Legends. The game was released back in 2011 and it was one of the first online games where you could play with other people, and surprisingly it's still active to this day. The idea of the game is pretty simple. You choose between 3 different characters which are the game's classes. The main focus is entering dungeons and defeating enemies to level up your character. The most impressive thing is that there are still people playing it, and it's a very lightweight game that works on almost any type of phone, and unlike some other games on our list, it's very easy to learn. It doesn't have many complicated features, and you could say it's a real old school game. ARKNIGHTS ENDFIELD is one of the latest big releases of games similar to GENSHIN Impact, so let's talk about it now. Unlike the other games, this one has a much bigger focus on rebuilding a city, mainly because of how the story and the game's progression work. However, as you can see, it also has several characters for you to collect in that gacha style, but what really stands out the most is definitely its open world, and of course, like many other games in this style, its cooperative mode works pretty well. You can explore the world with other people while also fighting monsters together. However, it's worth remembering that you can't play the famous story mode in co-op, only some other activities. For those games that you probably don't know and have never even heard about on the Play Store, but here you are going to discover them. Let's talk now about ASTERA. Well, you could say that this is an isometric RPG that tries to copy some of the essence of Diablo, but of course with enough unique characteristics of its own. If I'm not mistaken, the game has 3 or 4 different classes for you to choose from at the beginning. I personally really like the Archer. After that, you are thrown into a world full of corruption, monsters and demons for you to defeat. The game doesn't have much of a story mode, and the main focus is really just defeating monsters, but that's actually the fun part. And of course, like every good isometric RPG, it can also be played with up to 3 people, which is pretty interesting. And that's the end of our list. These are some of the best cooperative RPGs you can play on Android right now. Now I want to know, which one of these games are you going to try? Leave your favorite in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.